Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Retro Warriors episode 299. Woo. As always, I'm your host, Justin Baker, and as always, I'm joined by resident old bastard, Chris Saturn.
Hello.
Hello, Saturn.
Yes.
It's so close to 300.
I know, we're right there.
So let's just quit now.
Okay, we're done.
That would
Goodbye, everybody.
just be the worst ever.
Man.
Yeah, we made it to 299. That was it. It's all we could muster.
Can you imagine how much this next week will be anxious for us as we wait for 300?
Yeah, I don't know how we're gonna contain ourselves with our batch recording schedule. Where we have to record it in an hour.
Yeah, right.
Housekeeping. Go listen to Cinema Rogues.
Yes.
If you have not yet, you should
And
do that.
And also go listen to Board Game Barbarians.
Yes, and Board Game Barbarians. Also, I did just want to mention. It's been a weird week for several people involved with the show.
Yeah.
And I don't want to get into any details or anything, but just so if we seem a little weird or subdued or whatever,
Yeah, sorry
for
about that.
these two episodes, that's probably what it is. It's been a very weird. It's been a weird,
Yes.
few days.
Turns out reality caught up with us. Life isn't just video games.
Turns out it was fucking saving everything up for the last years. Fucking bullshit.
Yeah.
So yeah, I did just want to say that if we seem different or weird or whatever, that's probably what it is.
Also,
although I feel like
'cause-
every time I say that, it's then
Right.
imperceptible. So
Also, if things seem weird, it's because the two of us have decided we hate each other now.
right,
And,
we're
and we're mortal
yeah.
enemies.
We had a board meeting, and the board decided it would be funnier if
Right.
we hated each other on the show. My week, I'm still playing Yakuza Like a Dragon. I really am just dragging it out as long as I possibly can.
Nice.
Every time I put it in the notes, I'm like, I shouldn't even say it because of course I'm still playing it. But I've been pretty sidetracked by the business management minigame,
I'm so looking forward to that.
which first of all was imperceptibly difficult. I could not understand anything that was happening. But it had lots of like bright colors and people being like, yeah, good job. And it would like, it'd show me meters a bunch.
Right? Yeah.
And so I kept playing it, even though it was like, hey, you're failing badly. But I'm very much enjoying that. I still have not unlocked the kart racing in the game, and I'm well over 20 hours into it. I don't
How
know
many
when
of those 20 hours were the business management minigame.
Only a few, 2 or 3
Oh, okay,
max.
that's not
Like it's the latest thing I've gotten interested in the game is the business management minigame. And so I've been playing that, and the business management minigame is a lot of fun. It reminds me of like a Kairosoft game.
Oh, nice.
Which for people that don't know, they're the ones that did Game Dev Story and many other management style games.
That's what. That's kind of the same feel I got with the Hostess Club minigame in Yakuza Kiwami 2.
Yeah, this one does not have a real time component.
Oh, okay.
Because that one, that whenever you were actually on the floor, it was kind of real time, where you kind of
Right.
jumping around back and forth.
Yeah.
I guess there is sort of an RPG battle type situation that's it does require you to be a little quick, but it's it's fine. It's really not that bad, and it's a very small portion of the
Right.
business management minigame, as opposed to the Hostess Club management, which was the most of the game was you doing this kind of real time strategy type of
Right.
table balancing act.
And refilling ashtrays and ice pitchers
Right.
and stuff.
Right.
I got really good at the hand gestures that the girls would use.
Oh,
to
yeah.
refill
I
things. had
Yeah,
all
I was
those
like
down.
writing them down.
Right.
I was like, all right.
I was there.
I also picked up one of the Sega Astro City mini
Nice.
arcade cabinets.
How is it?
Limited Run Games was like, hey, we got 6 of them. We're going to sell them. And the day that they announced it, it was the Amazon deal of the day on Amazon Japan.
Yeah.
So I got the unit and a controller shipped to my door in 2 days for less than the cost of just the unit with LRG.
And you don't have to wait for the LRG pre-order for God knows
Right.
how long.
I did try to get one of the style kits, the little arcade attachment kits for it at LRG. But apparently, the way their site works is if you add something to your cart, it doesn't hold on to it so that you can check out.
Yes.
Which for any company that sells specifically limited editions of things and doesn't make it so that something in your cart, at least you've got a minute or two to check out, You can just fuck off now, please. Thank you.
I would like to extend that fuck off to Walmart and Best Buy, because that's how they're handling PS5 restocks too. Every time they have them, you can add it to your cart, and then it's like, never mind, sold out.
Like, I get it. You don't want someone to just sit with it in their cart, but is there no way to set that cookie to expire, to like put like, all right, you got a minute, you got 1 minute with it in your cart.
Yeah.
Like what? Like what? And they only got. I think they said.
I think it was 750 or something like that.
Some tiny amount of the style kit. So I did not get one of those. Although it was in my cart, I was so mad. I'm like checking out, and it was like, can't buy it. And I was like, oh fuck you.
I wish you had told me you were after it, because I was working from home that day, and it was the slowest part of my day when that went live. So I was just clicking through. I was like, do I want to buy them? They're all available right now. Nah, I don't want to do that.
The Astro City itself, I will say, I did not expect the built-in controls to even be usable, and they very much are.
Nice.
I wouldn't play like Street Fighter Alpha with it, but it works and it's fun. The screen's decent quality. The speakers get really loud, but they don't sound great. HDMI output is good. I'm still not in love with the lineup of games on it, but it's really
got Fantasy
cool.
Zone, right?
Yeah, it's got Fantasy Zone. It's got Virtua Fighter. It's got Alien Storm.
It's got
it's got a lot of
right.
Yeah.
Why do you need anything else?
Yeah. I mean, it's just, but I like it a lot. It's a really good mini console. I'm relatively happy with it.
Nice.
Build quality wise, it's very nice, very cute looking, and yeah. Nice. That's all I've been doing is playing Sega games inside of a Sega game and buying tiny Sega games inside of a smaller Sega arcade cabinet to play on my desk. Yeah.
I finished Yakuza 4, and it's so I enjoyed the story and I enjoyed the characters, but the gameplay was really starting to drag on me, just because it, like I mentioned last time,
it's just 3, but again.
Yeah, it uses that same game engine and a lot of the same animations and environments and everything. Yakuza 5 clearly has improved a lot of things mechanically. Like, it's closer to Kiwami 1 than it is to Yakuza 3 and 4, and I appreciate that. The story makes no sense to me. I'm still in the first area, and apparently some shit happened between Yakuza 4 and Yakuza 5 that it has not yet told me about.
They've yet to reveal.
Because nothing makes sense to me right now.
Is there maybe some type of side story that happened between them that you were supposed to have experienced?
I think it's
via a movie?
It's supposed to tell you later, but somehow Kiryu's a taxi cab driver now.
Okay. Well, he's got to keep busy.
And he lives in an apartment in a city I've never heard of with a woman I've never met. And I don't know what happened, but that's reality now. And
look, Sarah, he had a life to live. You don't want him to just sit there after Yakuza 4, do nothing, He's got stuff to do. He's a busy man.
The weird thing is, like, Yakuza 4 ends with Kiryu turning to somebody and being like, you have to honor the Tojo clan. Without them, there's no record of men like you or me ever existing. And then Yakuza 5 starts, and he's like, I got a different name, and I drive a taxi. It's fine. Don't worry about it.
Actually, it turns out you don't need to honor him. It's fine. You can just go get a regular job and be super happy and not have to deal with bullshit or getting fist fights or anything.
Right? Oh, no, he still gets in fist fights all the time.
Okay, well, fuck.
But, I was, like, going out of Yakuza 4, I was like, it feels too samey. And now starting Yakuza 5, it's like, everything's different now, and I don't know what's going on. And also, it's throwing a ton of minigames at me, and it's great. Because, like, the beginning of the game, it's like, you need to learn how to drive a cab. Make sure you follow all traffic laws. And it's got this little mini game about following the traffic laws in your taxi cab. And then immediately after that, it's like, also you should learn how to street race in your taxi cab, which is the opposite of the last one. And then after that, it was like, now here's a game about making ramen noodles. Yeah. And so, it's throwing a bunch of mini games at me, and I'm appreciating it, and it's ridiculous. So I'm going to keep playing it because, of course, I am.
I will say that where I am in 7, it is just now like, hey, here's the actual Yakuza game story.
Yeah.
Like, up until this point, I was like, it's fine. Doesn't really seem that Yakuza-y, but okay. Right. Now it's like, no, it's all here. I'm like, oh, okay.
I'm waiting.
All of a sudden, people are like secret identities and revealing and coming out from behind curtains like, actually, it was me. And you're like, okay, there it is. I found it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it because after 5, I'm going to go into 0. And everybody says that 0 has some of the best ridiculous, dumb mini games. And I'm really looking forward to that part.
I really want to play. There was a Fist of the North Star Yakuza game It was only on PS4, and I keep thinking about plugging in my PS4 and picking it up because it's still cheap, and man, it looks real dumb.
Yeah, I have less interest in that one just because I didn't really get into Fist in the North Star back in the day.
I think I've watched 2 episodes of it ever, but it's basically like anime Mad Max with Yakuza. Like, yes, sign me up, please. 100,000%. I saw one video on the game, and when you hit people, they'll scream, and a speech bubble appears above their head, and you can grab it and kill them with it. And that alone, I was like, I want to pay someone $20 just for having that idea.
Right.
Like if I could just mail a guy $20, it's like, hey man, that's a great job on that.
Nice.
Let's do some news.
Yes, sir.
First up, Hidden Palace released 700 PlayStation 2 prototype games to the internet, totaling over 850 gigabits.
Now
that's a lot of games.
A ludicrous amount. And I was reading the news release that they posted about it because they were saying that they were actually given a collection of well over 1,000 discs.
Yeah,
and they were just like, most of these are prototypes, but some of them might be released to market versions. So
then they just dumped over 3/4 of a terabyte of PS2 prototypes.
Well, no, they had to dump all of it and then do a byte for byte compare to be like, is this the retail? Is this not? I don't know.
Oh my god!
And what they determined was 700 of them were prototypes, and the rest of the games they were given were basically release versions, but it was either preview copies or review copies or
right.
some non-retail printing of the retail game.
Right.
And so they had to weed through all that before they could even get to how many were prototypes. So now they are going through them to determine what is different between them and the release version.
Holy crap.
Right. But good news for preservation either way.
Yeah. Speaking of preservation, Sony is permanently closing the digital marketplaces for the PSP and PS3 in July, PlayStation Vita to follow in August.
I'm so upset about this.
This is so soon.
Yeah.
And people are already reporting issues downloading things that they own. Like they're already saying, hey, I'm having issues getting to stuff.
Yeah.
The leftover online interface was already killed off without announcement.
Yep. So you
can't, even more bullshit.
Use the web interface to do it either. You have to go through a console to get to these things.
Developers were not told in advance. Some bought Vita dev kits as recently as a month before the announcement.
That's fucked. That's just straight up fucked.
The final Vita game to be published on the online store, called Scourgebringer, will only be available for 128 days. And several other projects in development are being forced to cancel work or pivot to other platforms as Sony kills basically any real legitimate retail access to these platforms.
That's so fucked up. Because for all of these systems, for all three of these systems, the PSP, the PS3, and the PS Vita, there's a ton of digital exclusive games that are essentially going to be in the realm of piracy only going forward.
And what's even more upsetting is my first thought was, oh, well, the way pirates pirate things on the PlayStation Network is they just go download it off the PSN and give it a fake key, basically. Yeah, but then, to get rid of that, they would have to remove the games from being downloadable, but feasibly the games will still be downloadable if you've purchased them, so it's not even stopping the pirates.
Correct. So
at least in theory, we haven't seen it play out in practice, so we don't for sure know. But that my first thought was, oh, it must be some like overreaction to piracy. It's not even that. It's just them being like, oh, who fucking cares? It's old. You don't fucking want that old stuff.
And what's bizarre to me is that they're shutting down these digital marketplaces for their quote unquote legacy platforms, while simultaneously telling people you should buy the PlayStation 5 All Digital Edition.
Yeah, it's this one's a pretty big blow. And obviously like Nintendo shut the Wii shop down, but I feel like this is very sudden. It's multiple platforms kind of all at once.
Oh, didn't Nintendo give a year heads up?
Oh yeah, they give a huge heads up. Yeah. And so it really is, it's just very frustrating. And it makes me concerned because I own a lot of digital PS3 items.
Yeah.
And I don't know that I have them all downloaded. I don't know how long I'm going to be able to download them all.
Right. I immediately hacked my PS3. Once this was confirmed, I went out and I hacked my PS3, and it is hacked now. I don't
Yeah.
know what I'm going to do with it yet. I started ripping some of my Blu-rays to it, but other than that, I don't know what, because it's still a PS3. I'm not going to want to play it or anything.
Yeah, it's just really frustrating.
Yeah.
I don't. I can't. It's just bullshit.
I'm more upset about the Vita than I am about the PS3 because it barely had a life to begin with, but it has been finding this nice community of indie developers who keep producing content for it.
Right. It's
And-
still an active platform, barely,
Yeah,
but it
right.
is.
But there's been a trickle of games, a few a month, coming out for the system. And there's a pretty decent sized online community that keeps buying these indie games for it, and they're basically just telling them to fuck off, and that's so upsetting for a system that's barely 10 years old, if that.
Yep.
So
It's just, and not to mention that so much of PlayStation's legacy was wrapped up in these PlayStation stores, like PS1 and 2 classics.
right,
Gone, just literally gone.
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
no more. Not only are they not making anymore, have spoken not a word about making any of it available on the PS5, but it's also gone now. You can't get it.
You can't even get it on the old systems. And just on the last episode, we were talking about how many of these games are still available as PS Classics on all these platforms, and you can go buy them still today.
Yeah.
Never mind.
It's ridiculous.
That's really frustrating.
Xbox Live is being rebranded to Xbox Network, but Xbox Live Gold will keep its name.
Sure,
This
thanks.
seems like a pointless rename. Everyone knows it's Xbox Live. Just
Right.
call it Xbox Live.
I don't know what the fuck they're doing there. But
I think they're
whatever.
trying to like unify, like they want people to think about Game Pass and Live as part of the Xbox Network. I mean, like from a corporate mind, I get it, but in practice, everyone's just gonna call it Xbox Live.
Right. And I guess maybe they're trying to unify because you got PlayStation Network, you got Nintendo Network now. So I guess they want to also have Xbox Network.
Right. They also want to seem homogenous with the rest of the game
Right.
industry. Nintendo and Niantic working on a mobile Pikmin game,
Weird.
which cool, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, they did well with Pokemon Go between the two of them. So, it might end up
doing
being
well is the understatement of the
Right.
century. They raked in billions of dollars.
Yeah, it was very successful. So who knows? Maybe they can strike it twice and convince people what a Pikmin is.
Yeah. Microsoft in talks to acquire Discord for a rumored $10 billion, which is $2.5 billion more than they paid for ZeniMax, $6 billion more than Disney paid for Marvel or Lucasfilm. This would be a massive acquisition.
Yeah, I'm still a little wary of it. Like I know that Discord is probably going to end up getting bought by somebody. I don't think they're profitable.
Oh, they will. I just don't want it to be Facebook.
Yeah,
please.
I don't want it to be Facebook. I don't want it to be Google. I don't want it to be Amazon. If I don't really want it to be Microsoft, but if it's going to be one of those four, then I guess I'd rather it be Microsoft.
And I'm in this situation where, and this is personal for us because we use Discord every day. We use it heavily for the show.
Yeah, we're using it right now to record the show.
Yeah, this is what we record the show with. And so it's this thing where I'm also kind of not really super happy with how Discord has even run its monetization models in the first place. They've cycled through multiple ones. Like they seem to be, I don't know. Like I would love for them to have more solid leadership and a more solid financial foundation.
Yeah.
I still don't like the idea of big tech companies gobbling up these smaller technologies I use.
But if it's going to be bought by Microsoft, if you guys want to just go ahead and roll Discord Nitro into Game Pass Ultimate, that's fine. I'm okay with that.
That'd be great.
That'd be okay.
PlayStation 1 can finally be soft modded via an exploit found in Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 and 3.
That's neat.
That only took forever.
Yeah, no, right. I don't know that I'll personally use it, but it is a neat soft mod. I watched some videos on it. So
Activision will offer free next-gen upgrades for Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2 owners for PS5 and Xbox users who bought digitally, but Xbox users with physical copies will have to purchase the game again.
Activision.
Because I read that weirdly, let me state it in normal human words.
Right.
If you bought Tony Hawk Remake digitally, you get the upgrade for free. On Xbox, if you bought it physical, you got to buy the game again. Sorry, fuck you.
But if you bought it physical on PS5, no, that's fine. You can.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. I just fuck off.
Right.
Qualcomm is working on a Switch knockoff. So Then again, who
Qualcomm.
isn't these days? Have you seen that Aya Neo floating around? It's an
No.
AMD
Weird.
Windows machine that's just
Bizarre.
literally a Switch.
I hate Qualcomm so much. They have had such a tight grip on the Android market for several years now, and it's really choked the growth of Android. And I was really happy with NVIDIA squeezing in with stuff like the Shield and like the Switch, producing their own ARM chips. And of course now NVIDIA owns ARM, so they're going to have a lot more say on it. So I don't want Qualcomm making a Switch knockoff. They can fuck right off.
Final Fantasy XI mobile reboot canceled after 6 years of development.
We don't know.
Presumably development.
Right.
After 6 years after it being announced.
Right.
So that's a bummer.
That is a bummer. Is this the same project as the offline version, or were those separate projects they announced? I can't remember.
They were, if I remember right, they were only really ever talked about together, but I don't know that they were explicitly linked. Really, so much information about this entire project was so hush-hush that we really just don't fucking know.
Also, it was so long ago that I don't remember shit about it anymore.
Streets of Rage 4 getting DLC. I'm in favor of that one.
Right.
What a fun game. Serious Sam 2 got its first update in like 8 years.
Was it? I thought it was longer than that.
It's maybe, and it added a lot of cool quality of life features.
Neat.
Although when you plug a controller up, it still shows an original Xbox controller in the menu.
like a 360 controller or like a
No.
OG? Nice.
Yes, it's a
Like a Duke?
Type S.
Oh, nice.
Because I was playing with my controller. I bought the game because I was like, I love Serious Sam. I'll play the new update. And it added like a radar and like rocket jumping and some other things. It's a very fun game for anyone that's not played Serious Sam and likes goofy wave shooters like Earth Defense Force and stuff. It's really fun.
What do the white and black buttons on your Type S controller do in that game?
I'm not even sure what they're mapped to, if I'm being honest.
I assume left bumper and right bumper.
I would too, but I don't know. Sony patents the ability to add trophies to emulated games. Fuck you. Stop it.
And the thing is, other people are already doing this. Why are they patenting it now?
It's like they just decided they're like, man, everyone's really excited about the PlayStation 5. How can we give everyone the middle finger and then still demand that they buy our thing? In the PlayStation 3 era, it was them coming out going, well, if you want one, you'll work a second job.
Yeah.
And now they have to do it different ways.
Right.
You know?
And the thing is that Sony has already had trophies in emulated games on the PS4. If you buy a PS2 Classic, it has trophies. So I don't know what the fuck they're talking about.
I don't know. Final Fantasy VIII Remastered dropped on mobile for $20.
Thanks, Square Enix.
So you can play it if you want.
I think it was on sale, like an opening day sale for only $17.
Oh, geez, that Square Enix mobile tax.
Yeah.
Reggie Fils-Aimé leaving the GameStop board of directors after 1 year.
That was enough for him.
Yeah, he was like, I'm good. No, I'll just quit.
It was all that Reddit excitement. It was just so much for him.
And finally, Total War Rome Remastered announced for PC. I'm excited about this one. I like the Total War games. I'm not good at them, and I can never finish a campaign, but I like them a lot.
Yeah, I think that's the only one that I played. I vaguely remember trying it way back when it first came out, but I can't say I remember anything about it.
I like them a lot. I'm also one of those scrubs that like I only play with friends against easy mode computers, and I don't play the battles because they're too hard for me.
Well, that's the way you should play strategy games. I'm with you.
So I do the thing where it's just like auto resolve, and I'm like, yeah, don't make me look at it.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's get into our topic at hand this week. We're talking Ghosts and Goblins.
And
Pardon me, Ghosts and Goblins.
Ghosts and Goblins.
Which, if you don't know, is Capcom's super spooky arcade classic that features both ghosts and goblins and some other things that taught us all that maybe it's okay to take a hit every now and then so long as you're not running around in your underwear.
Yeah, that's too far. If you're in your underwear, do not let anyone touch you.
That's the line.
Them's the rules.
Known in Japan as Makaimura or Demon World Village. Arcade version was developed and published by Capcom in Japan, first released September 4th, 1985, which is less than 2 weeks before Super Mario Bros. 1 released on Famicom.
Yes, and I feel like that's important to note just because anytime that you're talking about platformers of this era, of that mid-'80s era, you have to stop and think, is this pre-Mario or
pre or
post-Mario?
Yeah. Western release was published by Taito at some future date in time after that point. And it was also ported to the NES, the C64, and C16?
Yes.
The fuck is this? There's a Commodore 16?
Yeah, it had 16 kilobytes of RAM instead of 64.
That seems like a downgrade.
It was a downgrade, but it was cheaper.
That was ported to PC, MSX, ZX Spectrum, that's ZX Spectrum, to the rest of the world, Atari ST, Amstrad CPC, Amiga, NEC PC-88, and a bunch of other stuff. It's on everything.
Yeah. And that was just the ports within the first few years of when it came out.
Yeah, later on it was ported to Game Boy Color, Android, iOS. There's been versions of it on PSP. There's been it's on everything. It just came out on Switch, the original arcade version in the Capcom arcade thing like 2 weeks ago.
That's right,
so
yeah. And it was for a brief period of time, it was free too.
It is everywhere.
Yeah.
As far as first impressions, the NES version of the game came with my NES that I bought when I was 15. And I didn't own the game playing
2012?
This would have been more like 2004 or 5-ish. Which is when I bought my NES, because I had an NES growing up and then it was gone, or my brother wouldn't let me play it. Or I don't know. It was just like cheap. I was like at a game store and it was like, oh, an NES is $20. I got $20. Right. So I spent $50 and got a big stack of games and stuff with it.
Right.
And they seemed happy to see it go.
It was a different time then.
Yeah. And I never really thought of it as a bad game until I got older, and people people would be like, oh yeah, that bad NES port of Ghosts and Goblins, that bullshit game. I always put Ghosts and Goblins like right there alongside like Ninja Gaiden and stuff. Like, yeah, it's stupid hard, but it's really fun.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I never thought of it as a bad game. I was like you with Castlevania 2 and how you're wrong about that being a bad game.
It is a good game. Anyway,
it's not.
It is.
But,
it's no, I'm the same way with Ghosts and Goblins. When I first played it back, and this would have been in the late '80s, I assume. We played it, and it was mean, and it was unfair, and it was cruel, and it was hateful.
Right,
but
everything on the NES was mean and unfair and cruel and hateful.
Right, but it was charming, and it had cute graphics, and I didn't hate it. And I'd never played the arcade version because I guess Taito sent it to like 12 arcades in California and considered their job done. So I never got to play the arcade version of the game until many years later when it was included in some compilation, or maybe through MAME or something. So I thought it was fine too for years until I played the sequels on Genesis and Super Nintendo, and until I played the arcade game. Then I would go back and be like, the NES game is kind of rough.
Yeah, it wasn't until was it Ultimate Ghosts and Goblins on PSP?
Yeah.
Yeah, I played that and I was like, holy shit, this is real good. And then I went back and I was like, oh.
Yeah.
This one sucks. Like I realized,
who hit
like
this
had a
from
moment.
Me?
I refer to it as having a bad dudes moment these days, where I go back and I'm like, wow, I don't know, maybe it's not awesome like I thought it was.
Maybe they weren't really bad dudes. Maybe they were just bad.
It was bad something. As far as development, this game was directed by Tokuro Fujiwara, which is a former director at Konami who came to prominence at Capcom with games like Ghosts and Goblins, Sweet Home, the Mega Man series, Little Nemo, most of the NES Disney games.
Yeah, those little things people have never heard of.
A whole bunch of other stuff. Fujiwara has worked on a ton of things.
Oh, yeah.
And continues to work on the Ghosts and Goblins franchise to today.
Right.
They keep bringing him back for it from wherever he's at. I don't know if he's still at Capcom or not right now. I mean, he is probably currently because he worked on the newest one.
Right.
But yeah. Very well known. I tried to find information about this original game. Mm-hmm. I found several interviews about Ghouls and Ghosts.
Same here. Yeah.
But very little about the original game. Shmuplations has a bunch of interviews with Fujiwara. I did read through some of the later interviews where he talked about the original development.
Nice.
And he said that they originally intended to make a demon-themed game.
Yeah.
But they deviated and made the enemies cuter because he didn't want it to just feel like a cheap horror, like
Evil Dead.
Yeah, he wanted it to people to actually play it, not just because like, oh, look how gross and spooky it is,
Oh, so he didn't want to go Splatterhouse.
No. He wanted to do the Evil Dead 2 thing, not the Evil Dead 1 thing. I should have clarified where he was like, no, let's make it silly and fun.
Nice.
It's still horror themed, but it's fun.
Yeah, it's monster themed. I don't even know if it's horror themed.
Yeah. Red Armor was actually the first character conceived for the game. Nice. And the game was going to be about him. And when they pivoted and they were like, hey, let's maybe not just make this like Demons in Hell, that's when Arthur
let's wait for the spinoff for that.
Yeah, that's when Arthur eventually popped up later on down the line. Beyond that, there's not a lot.
It was really hard to find much as far as the original development. And I assume it's because it's just that era where there weren't a ton of interviews at the time. There were very few contemporary interviews, like what games are you developing and why? And it's not one of those games that, while it is iconic and it's well known, it's not so iconic and so well known that there aren't constant interviews with the dev team to find out about its history, unfortunately. So it's tough.
Right. As far as gameplay, it is Saturn wrote standard 2D platform game, which I don't even know what that means, but it is a 2D platform game. Correct. And it is very difficult.
Yes.
Players control Arthur, who's a knight wearing a suit of armor, and nothing under it, which as a longtime D&D player, let me tell you about not wearing padding underneath your armor. You can't do that.
He's wearing boxers under his armor. It's fine.
That doesn't count.
It counted enough.
He's journeying across a monster-themed landscape to rescue Princess Prin from Astaroth, the king of the demon world. Mm-hmm. Taking a hit from an enemy.
Astaroth is in Soul Calibur, isn't he?
That's the name of a character, but it's not the same Astaroth.
Probably the same Astaroth.
I assume it's just one of those like biblical names. Like it's probably the name of some demon somewhere that they're like, oh, there you will take that one.
No, it's the same Astaroth. Gotta be the same.
Taking one hit from an enemy causes Arthur to lose his armor, which leaves him in his trademark boxer shorts.
Yes. For years, I thought they were polka dot boxer shorts, and I had to go back and look at footage of the original to remind myself that no, they didn't introduce the polka dots until a later game.
And then eventually they became hearts, didn't they? They became
in Maximo.
In Maximo, yeah.
And then I pre-ordered Maximo, so I got my own real-life Maximo boxer shorts with the heart print.
Yeah. Gameplay-wise, it does have a little bit of that kind of floaty jump type situation.
Yeah.
Which
is on a lot of early platformers.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know that I would say it's like anywhere near as bad as like something like Castlevania or anything like that. It still feels pretty snappy to control, but there is an adjustment period.
Yes.
Especially with the jumping, especially with the later games that have double jumping.
Yes.
Which it's weird to get used to, but once you do, and you can also turn and attack while in the air, which alleviates a lot of the problems. Arthur starts the game equipped with a lance, which he can throw multiples of forward across the stage. Occasionally, other weapons will be dropped, and we have, I believe, just these are the weapons from the original arcade game.
Correct. Yes.
Which is the dagger, which is faster and weaker than the lance. You have torches, which kind of throw in this weird arc in front of Arthur. Mm-hmm. And it sucks. It does like it does the Castlevania holy water thing where it kind of burns on the ground for a second.
And if you just throw it at an enemy, it does like almost no damage. But if you throw it on the ground and the fireball appears and they stand in it, it does more damage because it's hitting them multiple times.
Yeah. You have axes, which are thrown in an arc above Arthur, and then you have shields and crucifixes that are fast, but they're the weakest weapon in the whole game.
In the arcade version, it was a crucifix. On the home ports, they were not allowed to just have Arthur throw crucifixes, so they replaced it with a shield. And inexplicably, the Commodore version replaced it with Arthur throwing heart projectiles.
And then in some weird kind of bullshit video game bubble bobble logic, if you don't have the crucifixes when you try to fight Astaroth, it bounces you back to stage 5.
Yeah, because that's bullshit is what it is.
Yeah, it is. As far as the stages, you've got stage 1, which is Graveyard to the Forest. Yep. After that, you jump into the Ghost Town, into the Underground Passage to the Demon Realm Castle. Then you have the entrance to the Demon Realm Castle, charge to the Demon Realm Castle, and then the top of the Demon Realm Castle.
Yes.
And we're not going to go over all the bosses in it. At the time,
well, first of all, if you complete stage 6, that's when you learn that this whole thing was just a trap laid by Satan, who was the demon who abducted Princess Prin, not related to that other Satan you've heard of.
Right. And different one.
And after you finish the stage, his trap is activated and it sends you back to level 1, and you must play the entirety of the game again to even get to Astaroth's room.
Yes, this is true.
Thanks, video games.
And the bosses are I don't even know that I'd say they're that notable. They're the kind of like mid-80s 2D platformer stuff that you would expect.
Right. They remind me a lot of the Milon Secret Castle bosses.
I could see that.
And that they're just big things that take damage.
Yeah, they take a lot of damage, and they have some weird projectiles.
Yes.
Like that's really what you're looking at as far as bosses.
Right.
And really, Ghosts and Goblins is... The way we're looking at it is kind of more like a framework, I guess, because the original arcade game is fine and notable enough on its own.
Right.
But really, the game has only had really like 1 or 2 true sequels.
There's been a few.
It's kind of just been remade whole lot of times.
Yeah, all the sequels feel very iterative. They feel like it's just the same game remade but better.
To go back to it, it's that Evil Dead thing where it's Evil Dead 1, then you have Evil Dead 2, and you're like, is this a remake or continuation? I don't understand. It seems like, why would they go back to the cabin? It's better, but it seems samey.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And then, the final stage is Demon Lord Astaroth's room. You fight him, you get the princess back, everything's wonderful.
Maybe them remaking the game multiple times is just more of Satan's trap. It's just making us play through it again, but slightly different this time.
That's devious. As far as presentation, the arcade game looks really good. It's a good-looking arcade game.
Yeah, especially for 1985.
For sure. My favorite is the key art.
That's so adorable.
For people that I haven't mentioned it in a long time, but Retro Warriors, us as a platform, we are a patron of Ryan Langley, who runs the Video Game Art Archive. And I went digging through the archive because I'm a patron, so I have access to find the Ghosts and Goblins art, because I had read that when Fujiwara was talking about the game, he was like, we wanted to make it like cuter to be more fun, so it's not just like some like, look, it's blood and gore.
Right.
And I went and found the Japanese key art, and man, it is some cute stuff. It is super cute.
Yeah, it's pretty disgustingly adorable. I love
the manual for I think it's the Japanese Famicom version, has like little comics of just like, you've got the Cyclops in there and just looking as adorable as could possibly be. The Western version of the cover art was a little more dramatic and foreboding. Right. It had fire on it and Astaroth standing up over Arthur and everything, but it was... it's one of those games that I like the supplemental art more than I like the art just in the game, which isn't to say the game looks bad. Just, man, there's some cute... If you like pictures of cute little monsters, oh, man.
Yeah, it's definitely worth seeking out just because it's all disgustingly adorable.
Yeah, the music is very iconic.
Oh, yeah.
It's been remixed in all of the sequels as well as in Mega Man 7.
Yeah.
It was composed... Go ahead.
Yeah, it's also shown up in some other Capcom games here and there.
It was composed by Ayako Mori, who worked for Capcom from 1984 through 86, and in that time, she also worked on Trojan, 1942, Gunsmoke, and a whole bunch of other titles. She's only credited in Ghosts and Goblins as Wood, and she's credited in Sidearms as Kinchaku Aya, and those are the only times she was credited in any of those games for her compositions.
You know, it's weird, the weird credits that a lot of Japanese developers had in games in the mid-80s.
I've always been told that it was to reduce poaching.
Probably, yeah.
So that companies wouldn't go find someone like, let's go get that person that composed, Ghosts and Goblins. That's good music, and just hire them. But I don't know. Because it was a thing in American game companies as well.
Yeah, I don't remember which game it was, but one of the games, somebody's name in the credits was their kid's name, and it was like Neo-chan's Papa or something like that. It's just adorable.
But that's the game, and it is a really good arcade game and a very well remembered arcade game.
With a lot of ports.
As far as the difficulty thing goes, I don't know. I've never had a problem with Ghosts and Goblins
Really?
difficulty, which isn't to say that I beat it easily.
I don't think I've ever beaten it without a game.
It's just to say that it has never frustrated me. The same way I've played Ninja Gaiden on NES, never beaten without cheats ever because I'm a mere mortal. But it never upsets me. You know, it's the same way I play the Dark Souls games. I've never beaten any of those. God, I've tried. And I think I just enjoy them for what they are. And I don't know if it's because I know going into it, like, hey, this is a really hard game. And maybe that's why it doesn't bug me. But Ghosts and Goblins is brutally, unfairly, like you said, hatefully difficult.
Yeah. Yes,
but I don't know why it doesn't detract from the experience for me. It does everything it could possibly do. Need special items to progress in the game or rebounds you back? Yep. Beat the game, you gotta beat it again? Yep. Whenever you die, you go all the way back? Yep.
Yeah.
No checkpoints? Yep. Like everything that
just not very many.
Yeah. They might as well not be there.
Correct.
I guess the difference with it being an NES, the NES game also didn't have unlimited lives, did
Correct. It did not have unlimited lives or unlimited continues.
Man.
Yeah.
Just a hard game.
Yeah, it was mean. I played it for a while there, and I got so frustrated with it that I ended up trading my copy to someone else for a different game.
Right.
I believe it was Dr. Mario, because my parents were very upset that I had traded away one of the games that they had bought, and then they played Dr. Mario, and they're like, "Oh no, wait, this is better.
Yeah,
I like this."
I don't know what it is. Like on paper, I feel like I should bitch about Ghosts and Goblins relentlessly.
Right. But it's really charming. It has a ludicrous level of charm that is as hard as it is, and as angry as it made me at the time. I always came back to it because of the art and the music, and just the world always felt like it had some kind of magic there. Even if I knew I would never ever beat it, I still wanted to keep playing it.
I wonder, and I mean, really, Fujiwara nailed it with his pivot. You know, like if this looked like Splatterhouse and still played the same, I wouldn't look at it probably ever again. I'd be like, that was fun, whatever.
Right.
I would just move on.
Yeah.
It really is the presentation and the art and the music that sells this game.
Yeah.
And this idea, you know. Let's talk reception. Game Machine listed the arcade machine in its October 1st, 1985 issue as the second most successful cabinet of the year, presumably mostly in
Japan.
Japan.
It's a Japanese magazine, so presumably just Japan.
CVG, which is a UK magazine, seemed to greatly enjoy the arcade Ghosts and Goblins and gave it a positive review. Although I read the review, and I don't know if anybody's ever read old 80s and early 90s video game magazine reviews.
Yeah, lots of them.
But they're not really reviews. They always do this thing where they explain the game. They're like, okay, so you're this plumber and you jump and you got to collect these mushrooms and save the princess. Anyway, that's our review. And you're like, no, what? How is it? Is it fun? What? Tell me how much you enjoyed it. They just explain the mechanics.
You have to remember how different games were back then. Because if you look if you look at like an Atari, where you're like, well, how is this game? It's a driving game and you drive in circles. Oh, I did want a drive in circles game.
But reading that CVG review, I read it like 5 times because I was like, am I missing the review? And then I'm like flipping through the magazine. I'm like, am I reading a preview by mistake? And it's like, no, this is their review. They're like, you play Arthur, and if you get hit twice, you die, and you got to say Princess Prin. It's real hard. I'm like, okay. Is it good?
You just
like
missed
it?
You just missed the review. He said it's real hard.
Wowikipedia rated it as a positive review, but when I actually read the issue, they didn't really go one way or the other. I would assume that back in the day, it was, if we're covering it, we like it.
That's true.
You know. The NES port sold 1.64 million units, which makes it one of the better selling games on the NES.
Right. And, you know, it was pretty prominent. A lot of people I knew had a copy. And that port gets some guff, especially these days compared to the arcade version. But it was a very prominent title on the platform for a long time.
I think it's one of those things where as time has gone on, even after the Genesis version, you know, it really is the worst version. The NES version is the worst version of the game in the franchise.
Hold on. The Commodore is still here, sir.
Okay, pardon me. The NES version is worse than anything that any Ghosts and Goblins port that happened post 1990.
Yeah. Well, it was pre 1990.
Right. No, I'm just saying.
Oh, okay, yeah.
All the later versions of the
okay.
game
I got you.
are better. We've constantly released better, more
Yes.
faithful, more enjoyable versions of this game. And the franchise has seemed to have, whereas a lot of franchises like Contra, for example, any other kind of like retro franchise that was very prominent on NES, it's kind of had this weird thing where it had this really good first few years, and then now they don't seem to know what the fuck to do with it.
Right.
Ghosts and Goblins, in an opposite kind of way, has been like, all right, well, it was okay. It was a pretty good game, and it's just getting better as time goes on. Almost all the home ports were well received.
When they came out.
As they came out. Other retroactive criticism, like you said, has been directed toward the difficulty. But again, that I don't know why. I feel like I really should be bitching about the difficulty, but I just don't. I don't know what it is. Saren, tell me about the legacy of Ghosts and Goblins.
So this is that iteration.
There's been a few different versions,
right? Yeah. So they count these as sequels, but like you said,
they're not.
It could just as well be remakes or revisions or reimaginings.
Yeah.
So the first sequel was Ghouls and Ghosts, which in Japan is called Dai Makaimura, or Great Demon World Village. And it came out in arcade in 88. It was later ported to the Genesis, the Super Graphics, the Master System, and the Amiga. Yeah. So it had new stages, new enemies. There were new weapons. You could. There was now a gold armor upgrade. So in addition to his standard armor, you could get upgraded to a gold armor. And as I was reading through all of the Ghosts and Goblins fan sites to determine, what all was new, one of them listed as a bullet point of what is new: the magician now turns you into a duck or an old man. And I'm like, that is technically new. True, I remember that, but I don't know why that needs to be right next to the other important things.
And I read interviews for Ghouls and Ghosts. Fujiwara said that they had the ideas for the game, and they had to wait until the arcade board that this was on existed before they had enough memory to do anything. Yeah. And then when they designed it, they still designed twice as much stuff as they could even fit into the board. So I would say, like, it feels like Ghosts and Goblins is its own thing, and then Ghouls and Ghosts is the sequel.
Right.
And then we just keep flipping back and forth between them. Yeah, and then sometimes mixing them in weird ways, which we'll get into later.
Yeah, well, I made sure to put the Japanese names on here too, because if you look at all the Japanese names for the series, it becomes more clear that they didn't see them as two separate things like we did.
Right.
It was just the iteration. So the next one you have is Super Ghouls and Ghosts, or Cho Makaimura in Japan, or Super Demon World Village. And it was on Super NES in 91, and it was later ported to the GBA in 2002. You have multiple different armor upgrades now that you can use. You can get a shield that can block some projectiles. Your weapons can be charged up to use more powerful moves when you have the certain armor, and the double jump was added into it. So it feels like a pretty significant upgrade just from Ghouls and Ghosts even.
Right.
And I feel like this maybe had some of that stuff that they couldn't quite fit into Ghouls and Ghosts. It feels like they kept getting closer and closer to what they were trying to do. Then the series took a break for most of a decade and came back with Makaimura for Wonder Swan.
Oh boy.
Which you would think this is a downgrade. We're back to an 8-bit monochrome platform, but actually they introduced things. They added divergent paths for the first time. You could actually choose which level to go to. It also gave Arthur the ability to swim, which I don't think he's been able to do in any game since then.
No, I can't think of any.
And also it was the first game in the series that did not require you to play it twice to get to the ending.
Finally.
Thank God. It only took them until 1999 to figure out that maybe people don't just want to play the game twice back to back.
Well, I guess when you're playing a port of an arcade game, they assume that you're just going to beat it in an hour. Because if you're like a master of the game, it's pretty short. No one is. I mean, someone is, but so maybe, I don't know. I can't. Did the arcade version require beating it twice, or was it just the home port? It did. All right. Well, I don't know. Fuck them.
Right. Then you have Ultimate Ghouls and Ghosts, or Goku Makaimura, or Extreme Demon World Village on PSP in 2006.
Yep. Which buy it now because
Yeah, right.
Although I don't know if it was this available digitally.
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah.
I believe there was a digital version. But yeah, it introduced an inventory system where you could get equipment that could be stored and then re-equipped later. And the weapon power-ups weren't tied to the armor power-ups anymore, so you could power up your weapons without powering up the armor or losing armor and still having the powered-up weapon. It was much less linear than before. There was finally multiple difficulty options for the first time in the series to allow you to make things a bit easier. And it was a big step up. Also, it was 20 years after the original game.
Right.
But it felt like finally the series was being a little more modernized compared to the originals that all felt still kind of arcadey.
Yeah, and I mean, really, there's been this progression in this series.
Yeah.
You know, like you were talking about, like they are definitely adding things. They are improving the formula. Ultimate Ghosts and Goblins did feel like it felt like a big jump,
right? And
it could just be that the last one was so long ago because I mean, the
15 years
previous
prior.
one was Wonder Swan.
Well, yeah,
you
there
know
was that one, but we never saw that.
It was I mean, maybe not a big deal to the gaming public at large, but like to me, it was a big deal.
Oh, right? Yeah, it was one of the few PSP games I was super stoked about. And just like there was a 15-year gap between Super Nintendo and PSP, there was another 15-year gap between PSP and Switch. We have.
Oh my god! I just realized 2006 was 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Oh my god!
Yep.
I'm about to fall out of my chair. Oh man!
Yep.
Woof.
So now we have Ghosts and Goblins Resurrection, which is the new one. In Japan, it's Kaeteki. I'm gonna fuck this up. Kaeteki. Fuck it. I'm not even gonna try. It's
Kaetekita. I don't know.
Kaetekita Makaimura.
Kit Kat Makaimura.
Demon World Village is back. That's what it means in our language, with the one that we speak.
Yes.
And you're probably going to be able to tell me a lot more about this one.
Yes.
Because you actually finished it. I have not finished it yet.
I bought and have been enjoying, and the whole reason we wanted to do this episode was for Ghosts and Goblins Resurrection. And then I made you play it. I was like, Saturn, you have to get and play Ghosts and Goblins Resurrection.
And I have been playing it. I'm not enjoying it nearly as much as you are.
Well, let me go through the features it adds. So this does have remix levels from throughout the series, as well as the ability to choose which level to play. Right. So you've got your A path and your B path. And
A path seems Ghosts and Goblins style.
A path is Ghosts and Goblins. B path is Ghouls and Ghosts levels. Because again, as much as these are sequels, they're also still kind of working with the same base material, the same level sets. But if it says still Ghouls and Ghosts, it's these levels. If it says Ghosts and Goblins, it's these levels.
Right, but it's still remixed versions of those levels. It's not just
they're not identical. Yeah. Stages have visible checkpoints, and variable difficulty levels are available, which can be lowered when encountering challenges.
And the lowest difficulty level is silly.
Well, so when you start the game, it says, hey, if you want the absolute lowest difficulty, you have to start the game that way and you can't change it.
Right.
Because the absolute lowest makes you literally invincible. And anytime you fall off a cliff or whatever, it lets you just teleport wherever you want to be on the screen.
Yes.
And it's basically like, hey, I want to experience the game and the story and see what happens, but I don't want to have to try.
Right.
And then in air quotes regular mode, there's a gradient difficulties that starts from like page and goes all the way up to like night or something.
Right. And there seems to be gradients between those too, because it'll let you lower the difficulty if you fail at something, but it doesn't lower it enough to drop down to the next difficulty.
Right. In items, equipment, and mechanisms seem to come from all over the franchise's history. Yeah. It does feel like a bit of a downgrade in some regards because it loses things like storing equipment. Right. It loses it has the gold armor. Yeah. But it's not the upgradable gold armor that it had previously, at least as far as maybe I've not been good enough to get it. It drops the double jump. Yeah. Just gameplay wise, it feels a little more floaty, a little more Ghosts and Goblins. Right. A lot of the Ghouls and Ghosts games to me felt a little more snappy. They always have.
Maybe they're going to release a Ghouls and Ghosts Resurrection in a year or two.
I'd buy that too. It also has the magic metronome, which allows players to slow time, or after you finish the game, you can speed up time to ludicrous speed, and it's insane.
Nice.
It also affects the music itself, which is kind of neat.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times there will be a segment where, I've tried it 20, 30 times, and I just need it to go a little slower. And sometimes I'll have segments that I need them to go a little faster. And the magic, having this many granular difficulty options, having an invincibility option, having a magic metronome, I very much applaud the accessibility of this game.
Absolutely.
Boss battles have been boss biddles. That's my new cereal. Boss biddles.
I took an
Puff
ambulance
rice.
to the boss battle.
Fell and hit my head. Can you take me to the boss battle? The boss battles have been completely retooled. They're entirely new encounters. So almost all of them have gone from being like a little guy that jumps around on the screen to full screen filling giant set piece moment affairs.
Yeah, and they'll go into the background and shit. There's all kinds of actual gameplay involved there.
Yeah, and it's a lot of fun. Yeah. Especially Astaroth himself. That boss battle is a lot of fun. Just they really have completely redone boss battles entirely. And after finishing the game, you unlock shadow paths for the levels, so you can go back through I did it all A path, so Ghosts and Goblins path.
Yeah,
and then now my Ghosts and Goblins path is all shadow levels, which are like remixed levels of the already remixed levels. After you beat the game one time, it does show you the full credit roll. It says, congratulations, you beat the game. Good job, which is nice.
Yeah.
That you get to feel like you have a little bit of closure. And I will say that difficulty-wise, the last half of the game, at least on the A path, feels substantially easier than the first half of the game.
Weird. Is it because you've gotten used to all the mechanics, or is it because it's easier?
I think they are just easier. Specifically, the dragon boss. I probably fought that thing at least 50 times minimum. It got to where I had memorized how many times he would do certain actions and count them as I was playing, because that's how many times I played it.
Right.
I do also want to note Red Arimer, who's a recurring enemy in Ghosts and Goblins and Ghouls and Ghosts, and is also known for being one of the more annoying enemies.
Yeah.
All of his boss fights, at least in the A path, are completely optional. You never actually have to fight him.
Yeah. Well, that was how it was in the original game,
A-path.
too. You could run away from him.
I never could.
He's fast.
In this one, it wasn't even like you encounter him and you can run away. You can completely avoid him. I did. I never even, because a lot of the time it's like, all right, you jump over him and you run past him real fast. I didn't even do that. I never really fought him once, which is kind of nice because he's intentionally the most annoying enemy. There is one boss that I think is supposed to be like a souped up version of him, but it's different enough that it doesn't really play the same.
Yeah.
There is also an upgrade tree that includes passive abilities. You get a big roster of magic spells you can flip between and upgrade. You collect what are called umbral bees that you spend on the umbral tree. Everything rhymes and it's cute. And I do love, I really love this, and I don't know if it's just because I was on the lowest of the normal difficulties or not, but when you would play, sometimes an umbral bee would pop up, and you're like, oh shit, I have to grab that for the upgrade point, and you would grab it and die in the process. Because of course they put them in tricky spots. I noticed near the end that if you grabbed them once, then when you respawn, you still got them.
Yeah,
they'll pop up
in the
again.
first levels.
Yeah, they'll pop up again, but it's like a little bonus points version of them. You got the points. You get to keep them.
I was as you were saying that, part of me was hoping that there was going to be umbral versions of the weapons, just so that there could be an umbral lance that we take to the boss battle. Sorry, I had to shoot that in there.
Thanks, Dad. I really like Ghosts and Goblins Resurrection a lot. The only thing I don't love is the art style. They adopted this kind of canvas-y, painterly looking art style, which in still images looks beautiful. But the animation of it looks very like Flash animation-y.
Yeah, it reminds me of it's kind of this mural art style kind of. And it reminds
which is cool and works
Yeah.
really well, but the animation is
And I'm trying to remember which game it is, but I feel like I've seen some games that use that for like the introductory video. Like
Yeah.
at the beginning of the game, it uses this art style, and then once the game starts, it's like, all right, we're done with that. Let's get into the real game.
right. They
And-
fade into the actual graphics.
Right. And seeing the trailers for it, I kind of expected that. So seeing it the whole game is a little different. I don't necessarily dislike it, but I can definitely see where you're coming from. It is weird.
Yeah. It again, visually it looks good. It sounds great.
Yeah.
But I just the animation is a little flappy,
Yeah.
for me. It's just a little weird. And really that's my only complaint I can lodge against it. I do wish it kept some of the previous things that the series
upgrades
has
that it's
added.
lost, yeah.
And maybe it does. Maybe I can unlock them later. This is a game where I feel like I'm constantly unlocking stuff
Fair.
even after I've beat it. So maybe there's some whole secret version of the game that I haven't made it to because it's very hard. I will say I did beat the game on stream, so that was exciting.
Yeah,
I think it's the first game I've ever beaten on stream.
Nice. It feels like I've had that complaint about other Capcom games in the past, because when Mega Man 9 came out, I was very upset that it lost a lot of the upgrades that the Mega Man series had developed over the years
Yeah.
to go back to Mega Man 2 style. And that sounds like it's the same kind of complaint that you have here, that it lost a lot of the upgrades that we saw in Super Ghouls and Ghosts and Ultimate Ghosts and Goblins to go back to where the series used to be.
Yeah. And again, for all I know, it's in there and I just can't get to it
Right.
yet. I will say I did see a lot of people being like, yeah, I don't know, $30 for Ghosts and Goblins. That seems pretty steep.
It does feel
And
steep.
I don't know. This feels like a full-featured enough game.
Right. Yeah, well, once I had it and I got to see what all it has to offer, I can understand why it is $30. There is $30 worth of game there.
For sure.
but
But
if-
just
if
someone
you're
just being
not a
like, hey,
Ghosts
would you
and
pay
Goblins
$30
fan-
for arcade Ghosts and Goblins? I'd be like, no,
No.
never. I wouldn't pay $10 for it. So I did want to mention that because I
Right.
saw a lot of discourse of people being like, yeah, Ghosts and Goblins, I'm not going to pay $30 for it. This is a new game and it
Yes.
feels new and it feels different and it has a lot of content. I
Yeah.
do think it's worth the asking price.
Right.
I don't know if it's better than
Ultimate.
Ghosts and Goblins. Ultimate Ghosts and Goblins was just so good and looked so good and played so good that I'm just not totally sure. But time will tell.
For me, it's
I
worth
guess.
it because it's not on a handheld.
That's true. I mean, the Switch is a handheld.
That's true. You could also
Saturn.
use
If
it
you
that
pick
way.
your Switch up out of the thing, it's actually a little tablet inside of. That's not the system.
Oh,
yeah,
I
it
taped
comes
it in
out
the
of that.
dock.
I was wondering why it had buttons on it. That's weird. Like one of them plug and play consoles, it's attached.
Just sit right next to your TV and hold your dock.
Obviously, Ghosts and Goblins, in addition to kind of being its own spin-off with Ghouls and Ghosts,
Right.
has other spin-offs
Several.
that Saturn will now tell us about.
Yeah, so you have your we already went through that.
Right.
You have your Gargoyles Quest series, which was a Ghosts and Goblins spinoff where you play as Red Armor, only his name is Firebrand now.
Mhm.
And it had a sequel.
Because America.
Yeah, it had the sequel, Gargoyles Quest 2, and it had its own spinoff with Demon's Crest.
Yes.
which
I don't ever include Demon's Crest in the Gargoyles
Me
Quest lineup because it's literally a different game.
Yeah, it's very
just
different.
Yeah.
And I don't enjoy it. Then you have
I don't either. I know it's worth like $700 or
Right.
whatever, but I don't. I've
think
tried
it's
it a few times. It's not bad. It's just a little.
Yeah,
I don't know what it is. You know what it is? It's not cute.
that's true. It is ugly. It is
In
straight
Gargoyles
up
Quest
ugly.
1 and 2, they had
They're
a more
still-
serious tone,
Right,
but
they're still cute.
They still were cute.
Yes.
Yeah.
I picked up Demon's Crest used at a rental store way back in the day, and it's been sitting there on my shelf, and I've played it a few times, and every time I'm like, I don't like any of this. I just don't get into it.
Gargoyles Quest 1 and 2, though, man,
both
those are some
excellent.
good games.
Absolutely.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
Have we done episodes on those? We should do
We have
that.
done an episode on the second one. We have not done an episode on the first one.
What the fuck is wrong with us?
Then you have Maximo 1 and 2, which were on
Mhm.
the PS2. And it was kind of a reimagining of the series from the beginning to make it more story-driven. And
Yeah.
also it was a 3D action platformer, like every 3D action platformer on the PS2.
I feel like these are
okay.
never talked about
Yeah.
anymore, but they were a thing.
Oh yeah, they got
They
some
were
attention
pretty
when they came out,
popular.
right?
Yeah.
And then they quickly fell off the radar. And I don't know if it's just because Capcom pivoted so hard into all Resident Evil all the time,
Right.
or if they just generally were forgotten. I feel like these would be should have been games that should have been HD remastered with everything else during that era. And I don't know what happened there. Maybe it's because I think they were Western developed, and maybe Capcom was not super big on their Western developed games or something. I don't know.
I don't know. I remember it being, it was like it was. I don't want to say it was really popular because
No.
I don't. But I worked at a game store
Yeah.
when PS2 was still on the shelves, and Maximo sold. I feel like I remember seeing Maximo TV commercials.
Yeah, there were.
Like it was a thing.
Yeah, and we when the first one came out, I remember there was actually a pretty reasonably sized marketing push for it. We had a whole end cap of just Maximo stuff. We had a standee, we had strategy guides at the front counter.
I remember lots of magazine ads because that's when I was reading gaming magazines. Was that era?
And of course, if you pre-ordered it, you got the boxer shorts because of course you did.
Of course. What is it with arcade games or not arcade games? Video games coming with underwear. Why is this a thing?
And let me tell you, they weren't comfortable boxer shorts.
The first Maximo reached PlayStation 2 greatest hit status in the
That's
United
true.
States.
Yeah. Yeah, there was a
So,
GH print.
That's something.
did
The
all right.
sequel doesn't seem like it did.
Yeah, I didn't like the sequel as much as the original either. So maybe that's what it was. Just the sequel was a disappointment and it fell off.
Yeah, it's Army of Zin.
Yep.
Although Maxim magazine gave it an 8 out of 10, saying it ain't groundbreaking, but who cares? Drop trow and have some fun.
That's the most Maxim sentence I've ever heard.
And composed by Tommy Tallarico, both of them.
Yeah, I believe that. But no, they're fun. If you have a PS2 or a PS2 emulator and you want to dick around with a Ghosts and Goblins like game, they're fun. It's worth checking out. Then you have Ghosts and Goblins Gold Knights 1 and 2, which were both on iOS, and so I know nothing about them.
Mm-hmm.
So
neither do I.
So my theory is that Ghosts and Goblins spinoffs can only have one sequel, and that's it. That's the end.
You think? Oh, yeah. I guess that tracks.
Yeah, they all had a 1 and a 2. We don't count Demon's Crest; it doesn't count.
No.
So they all had a 1 and a
Correct.
2, and then they just fell off.
Really, Ghosts and Goblins had a sequel. It was Ghouls and Ghosts,
Yeah.
and then they quit.
They
And
had
they're
Super
like-
Ghouls and Ghosts, and they fell off.
That's true. They're like, well, that's it. We're done.
But if you look at the Japanese names, it was always just Makaimura. There was no
Right.
differentiation between
Yeah.
Ghosts and Goblins and Ghouls.
They were
and
just
Ghosts.
adding to it.
Right.
As far as references, Arthur appears as an assist character in Marvel vs. Capcom before later appearing playable in Marvel vs. Capcom 3 and all Marvel vs. Capcom games since we listed, all one of them since Marvel vs.
There was
Capcom
Ultimate
3.
Marvel Cap 3, and then that other thing.
Oh, you're counting Ultimate separately.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Firebrand is also in Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3 and the all subsequent Marvel vs. Capcom games. He's been in every Marvel Cap game since Ultimate Marvel Cap 3. He's been in all of them.
All the one.
Everyone, every single one of them they released.
I do appreciate how much they have incorporated Arthur into the storyline in
Yes.
the Marvel Cap games. Marvel Capcom Infinite, which, for the record, is a terrible game. That I spent way too much money on pre-ordering the special collector's edition.
Did you get the one that came with the little plastic eggs that they called Infinity Stones?
I did not. I just
Do you
got the
fucking remember
regular-
that
Yeah, I do.
fiasco? I'm sure we covered it on the show.
What a fucking disaster that was. Now I got the regular Steelbook version.
Yeah.
But no, throughout the game, as bad as the game is and as terrible as the art is, it does constantly have like these serious MCU style Marvel characters next to these quasi serious Street Fighter and Resident Evil characters, and then there's little tiny Arthur in his full suit of armor all the time.
Yeah, they keep him like he is a human being,
Right.
but they make him short and cute next to other normal humans, which just it's just like this Sonic 06 syndrome where you're like, what is happening in this
I
world?
love it. I love it so much.
Nothing is congruent. He's also selectable in Cannon Spike, which is a very good Dreamcast game you should all go download.
Right.
He's also in Namco Cross Capcom and Project X Zone. Is he in the sequel, the second Project X Zone? I
don't know. I believe he is, but I don't know. I keep seeing pictures of Project X Zone 2 lately just because I signed up for the Yakuza subreddit.
Yeah.
And so I keep seeing pictures of like Majima next to like these adorable old Capcom characters. So
yeah.
I'm looking forward to maybe playing
I kind of want to get
someday,
those games.
right?
Yeah, I'm sure they're crazy expensive.
I'm sure.
But yeah,
Anyway.
as far as final thoughts, I it might be Stockholm syndrome, but I've enjoyed every iteration of Ghosts and Goblins I've played.
Right.
I've especially enjoyed Ghosts and Goblins Resurrection. The NES version, looking at it, is pretty objectively bad as far as ports go, but
Right.
it's still very functional and
Yeah.
cute, which it was enough. That was enough back then,
Especially when it came out.
For most modern players, the most recent iteration is enjoyable, retains enough of the original game's DNA that I don't feel like you'd be missing much by starting with Resurrection.
Right.
I would definitely say if you can get your hands on Ultimate Ghosts and Goblins, that might be. I don't know if it's the better game, but it's the more fun game, if that makes sense. But
it does feel like
it
has some more stuff to it too. Even if it may not have as many levels or as many upgrades or whatever, it feels like it has more mechanics to it.
Yeah, so both of those are great places to start with the series because there have been very few actual legitimate sequels that continue anything in any meaningful way.
Yeah.
Really, any of them you can get your hands on, you've had the experience. It's very samey.
Yeah, that's true. But like we said, it does iterate on that sameness as it goes on. So it is, for me, for somebody who likes seeing iteration, that's not just in games, but in any kind of media. I'll sit there and look at somebody's logo evolve over 40 years. But
I might actually say that I think maybe starting with Resurrection and then going to Ultimate Ghosts and Goblins might be a good path.
Yeah. It would certainly make you appreciate the gameplay style and maybe make you better at it before you jump into Ultimate.
Yes, for sure.
But yeah, I love seeing how things progress. So I enjoy still going back to the beginning and seeing how these old games play out and how they evolve into what they've become. And if you enjoy that, it's definitely worth going back to the original and seeing that stuff. If you don't necessarily want to see the beginnings and you just want to see once it's already built into something, I would say probably start with Ghouls and Ghosts or Super Ghouls and Ghosts. And if you really just want to see the end product, then yeah, probably just the Switch or PSP games will be enough to give you a real taste for what the series has to offer.
Yeah. Anyway, that's our show. And if you'd like a taste of what we have to offer,
God damn it.
We have a Patreon that you can do money at
gross.
At patreon.com/retrowarriors.
None of that was good. I regret that whole last minute or so.
Where you can get cool things like uncut versions of this show a couple weeks early. You can get our spin-off show Talking Wizards, which is just dumb.
It was dumb like that segue.
You can also come chat with us on Discord. There should be a link in the show description if I did my job. You can also rate and review us on your podcast aggregator of choice. It does mean the world to us. And if we provide you with some value, then it would mean a lot to us if you would consider leaving us even something as simple as an iTunes review or just telling a friend about the show. Yeah. Or if you don't have a friend, go make a friend and then be like, hey, actually, this friendship was guerrilla marketing for the Retro Warriors video game podcast. So go listen to them.
Or you could buy our stickers at Redbubble. And,
we do have a Redbubble.
And just go leave them at GameStop as revenge for all the stickers they put on fucking everything.
Yeah. Anyway, we do want to thank the following patrons for making this show possible. El Malaguero.
George McBain.
James Myers.
Jurgen.
Lachlan Heatherton.
Mark Meredith.
Mike Rotondo.
Neil Hayes.
And Franch. Which is only funny to me because there's a period on the end of it.
It's also funny because of how comparatively normal all the other names were this week.
And then Franch.
It's great. Love it.
Are all the people that made the show possible. They're all wonderful patrons of ours, and we appreciate them, and we appreciate you for listening.
Yes.
And we'll be back in a couple weeks. Actually, not a couple. We'll be back in 1 week. Well, we'll be back in like a few minutes. But listen, I've been talking for too long. Thanks for listening to the show. We'll see you next time. And as always, let us cling together.